Well, I think you've heard of incels by now, but today I wanted to talk about their female counterpart, the femcells. And this is a growing subculture, mostly online because these people don't leave their homes. I recently saw a tweet posting this screenshot of a girl saying, "I'm 24 years old and I've never had a boyfriend." This post got 41 million views because people just couldn't fathom the idea that there is a Gen Z girl out there who can't land a boyfriend. And it's kind of shocking because most of what you hear about Gen Z's dating habits is that the men are checking out, but the Gen Z girls are actively dating. I'm seeing a growing contingent, though, of Gen Z females who are either involuntarily or voluntarily opting out of both dating in general and hookup culture. They say, "Why am I seeing so many girls that have never had a boyfriend? What is going on? I'm not passing judgment on anyone that hasn't been in a relationship before because I'm 23 and in the same boat. However, what I'm trying to understand is why many young women have never been in a relationship before. From my perspective, I've put it down to COVID and social media ruining how people interact and lack of socializing in person, also due to feminism and calling everything a man does toxic masculinity. Men don't approach women because they're too scared or women will see it as creepy. Despite women complaining about being approached by men, they still report that they would like men to make the first move still. So you can see how this would cause much confusion between the genders." Very balanced take.
Yeah.
This makes
Surprisingly
me
balanced.
happy, by the way, that I can remember myself being in high school wondering when this shit would die, and it would be glorious to watch. And
By
now
this shit, what do you mean?
The whole because back then it was still you gotta really watch the way you talk to a girl in public or else you fucking get to catch a charge, like that type of deal. And now that's getting to the point where everyone's actually tired of it. It's just great that I'm seeing you lie in your own beds like you deserve.
Well, okay, to be fair to the Zoomers that are complaining about these social ills, I don't think they created them.
No, but they've definitely done nothing to help it.
What would you do to help the situation? What can you do?
Not take part.
So you mean the girl in question?
She's doing the right thing now.
She should opt out of dating.
Yeah, right now. You would agree that people shouldn't be hooking up before marriage, which most of these people were doing in the first place.
I would agree with that. I don't think that the answer is for Gen Z to en masse opt out of dating in general, as long as it's not in conjunction with meaningless hookups.
Like dating apps.
Because if obviously she's interested in having a boyfriend, this girl's post says she wants to have a boyfriend. She is not looking for someone to hop into bed with her. She could find that literally within minutes.
Yeah.
If she just downloads the Tinder app, swipes for a few minutes, easily, someone will hook up with her. It's not like women are hurting for hookups.
Yeah.
I think she's lamenting the lack of
Commitment.
men who want to commit. I think that's what she's probably complaining about here. So that's why there's some confusing, conflicting discourse about incels versus femcells. So incels are saying we're involuntarily celibate, meaning we want to have sex, but we can't. And then the femcells are saying, more likely,
we want commitment, but we can't find it.
Yeah, we're involuntarily single when we want to be in relationships. Or they're saying they are voluntarily celibate because they know by now that those hookups are not going to be a path to a long-lasting relationship, which they're correct about. But they're choosing the black pill instead of hope.
Yeah.
And there's the romance gap when it comes to Gen Z men and women compared to the sex gap. Gen Z, on the whole, is having less sex than previous generations. But I think Gen Z women are more likely to date in their teen years than Gen Z men. This says it's not just sex that's declined among teens, it's romantic relationships overall. Teens are dating less. A survey conducted by the Survey Center of American Life found that only 56% of Gen Z adults and 54% of Gen Z men said that they were involved in a relationship at any point during their teen years. So that means 44% of Gen Z men did not date at all in their teen years.
Yeah, makes sense.
And this represents a remarkable change from previous generations where teen dating was much more common. Over 3/4 of baby boomers and Gen Xers reported having a boyfriend or a girlfriend as teenagers.
There's a trope that would go on in a lot of the shows in the early 2010s into the late 2010s where the parents of teenagers would be like, they would kind of be exasperated where the kids are like, we don't date, we hang out in large groups of people. And the parents are always like, but who are you going to prom with? And so this is actually a trope that's been going on for longer than most of these people were even teenagers and stuff like that. And it's kind of the consequence of that as a culture.
The pressure to date from your family also no longer exists.
Is that true? Is that like you don't
as far
show
as
up,
I can tell.
You don't show up to Christmas and your grandma's like, Michelle is still single in her mid-20s.
It's like very...
When are you going to settle down?
It's very Bridget Jones's diary. We have another 20 from Corey Anderson. Kara was laughing while Mary was reading about femcells, thinking to herself, I've never had an issue getting a man. Out of shape and unkempt women will always have issues flinging partners.
But I wouldn't say that woman in that TikTok is out of shape or
unkempt.
No,
she's pretty hot. Like,
yeah, she's a good-looking young girl. There's no apparent reason why she should be single. She doesn't look unkempt to me.
I was laughing because there's that term sex zoned, and then there's friend zoned, and there's wife zoned. So easy to get sex zoned as a female. That's why I was giggling. So
yeah, maybe that's why some of the Gen Z women are becoming volcells.
Yeah.
Because, they've made that mistake of getting sex zoned too many times.
Yep. That's a thing.
But they say here, the decline in teen dating is not good for young people, especially young men, since these early relationships offer vital opportunities for developing relational skills and confidence. Another study by San Diego State University Professor Jean Twenge examines the effect of smartphones on the generation's willingness to date. She found that only 56% of high school seniors in the year 2015 had been on dates, compared to 85% of boomers and Gen X. So that's not even to talk about whether you labeled a relationship. Whether you had been on a date at all is off the table.
Wow.
And that was back in 2015. I can't imagine the situation has gotten any better in the last 9 years.
Yeah.
Only worse.
23 when I went on my first date.
Wow. Yeah.
Was that intentional?
Yeah.
What was that thread that was going around this past week about the dude who's like, got my first date, he's got the flowers, takes the picture in the mirror, and everybody was dunking on the dude?
Oh yeah, what was that about? Okay, so there's this young guy, he posts a mirror selfie holding a bouquet of flowers saying he's about to go on a date with this girl. And all of these people just started hating on him ruthlessly. I don't even know why.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, people just hate seeing someone else put in the effort that they're not willing to put in.
Or maybe it was like a feminine approach to it, posting about your first date,
Maybe.
Yeah, here, I found it.
Obviously, by posting about it, you're inviting people to have whatever reaction.
Yeah. It says, first date ever, absolutely bricking it. Wish us luck, ladies and gentlemen. And and a lot of people came to the dude's defense, are like, this is wholesome. What is your problem with this? And then it became a huge debate about whether flowers were an acceptable first date thing. And I was like, this is why you guys are all miserable, because you're having this
stop
debate
overthinking it. Oh my gosh, it would be better if you just went on a date at all.
Like, they were like, oh, a dozen roses is too much. A single rose is okay. Roses aren't okay. This flower is okay. I'm like, this is why you're going to be miserable forever.
Honestly,
because you care.
Now that we bring up the roses thing, I think a single rose would be weirder than a bouquet of roses.
Yeah, it's like you weren't willing to spend the extra like $10. Like,
but it also isn't about. It's not about the money thing. It's also just like you're handing like a stem. Like, it's not the right vibe.
Chat.
We have another.
Chat. What's weirder, a single rose or a dozen roses on your first date? Inquiring minds want to know.
That should be our next
I feel
poll.
like a dozen roses is a little weird. I would have had a single rose. On
okay,
first
a
date.
little weird.
We have another 20 real quick from Nate Parrott. Chuck Norris once threw a grenade and killed 10 men. Then the grenade exploded.
I love those.
So your take is that a single rose would be
On a
superior.
first date, I think
Okay.
that's precious. That's cute.
Well, regardless, the reason the guy was getting hate, it had nothing to do with the flowers.
No.
It was about
so
jealousy and resentment.
people are talking about whether it's excessive or not. That's fine, but we're in a culture now where everyone's having such a hard time getting to the dating point anyways. Maybe we should like just accept that a dozen roses might or might not be, but let's actually, that's an embarrassment of riches. Like, you're just having to ask the question whether you have a dozen roses is enough or too many. That he's farther along than most of the people having that debate who don't seem to be going on any dates with any roses or any flowers at all.
How can you hate when you're outside the
Yeah.
club?
Exactly.
You can't even get in.
You can't even get in.
People are arguing. Dozen is too many. Like,
I
okay,
don't know,
he's
man.
still better
This
off
is-
than like most of the people in this situation who aren't going. At
He
least,
seems like a genuinely happy person, so
He does.
he's winning.
and if
but
it's too much, it might be down to like she sees in earnest that his personality was like he's not trying to. Then you'll get like he was love bombing me with a dozen like you know what I mean? Like he seems like a nice enough kid. She's like, oh, it was a little excessive, and that's endearing.
Even that is something you learn over time by experience, not from people harassing you on Twitter. I want to get into some of the differences observed between incels and femcells, though. The Independent published an analysis of this back in October, saying, forget incels, meet femcells, the generation embracing toxic femininity.
There's a 20 here from Just 'Cause I'm Free. Hear me out. A single rose that you grew yourself is better than a dozen store-bought roses.
Okay, yeah, well,
That you grew
yourself.
okay,
Like, yeah.
that
You may,
changes things.
you may
What?
fascinate her with the wheel
But then
of
I would be like,
cheese.
oh, you
Yeah.
garden? I would get the ick.
Fascinate her with a wheel.
Mary would immediately have the ick.
Yeah. They identify as femcells, a female spin on involuntary celibate men who worship at the altar of Gone Girl and valorize sociopathy. But this very online way of life is a worthy pushback to regressive ideas of femininity, or is it just another way to make women feel bad about themselves? Unlike its more sinister cousin, the incel, the femcell is a creation tied almost exclusively to the internet age.
See that, guys? The male version is inherently worse. They said so in the article.
Femcells are described as a female version of incel, or more accurately, they're defined as a woman who doesn't have sex voluntarily or otherwise, and more importantly, is chronically online, a social reject, especially in real life, and mostly has online friends, if any IRL friends at all.
There's a 20 here from Mr. Moose Knuckles. Says, do you think people no longer wanting to date is a response to all of the dividing arguments the mainstream media has been pitting the opposite sexes against each other?
Yes.
That's not even just the mainstream media. The internet in general benefits greatly off of the gender divide.
Yeah, definitely. Femcells defy actual definition because it's mostly an expression of taste. They exist on visual platforms like Instagram and TikTok, where it's easy to communicate the aesthetic that has become synonymous with femcell. They have femcell bingo cards with points awarded for poor posture, poor emotional regulation, and violent misandrous takes. They have femcell music playlists and a wealth of femcell fictional characters to identify with,
What
from
is that?
Gone Girl to My Year of Rest and Relaxation, The Virgin Suicides, The Bell Jar, and Fleabag.
So,
What unifies them all is a
Phoebe
feminine ennui, a sense of loneliness or rage, a character or celebrity that can become an insert for misery and misanthropy.
Wait, so what is femcell music?
They included examples like Mitski, Phoebe Bridgers, Fiona Apple.
Yes.
Alanis Morissette.
Okay, Fiona Apple. Fiona
one of
Apple would have just meant you're kind of an alt chick with a shorter haircut in the 90s or the early 2000s.
They would have fit in perfectly fine.
They would have been like, it's like saying Natalie Imbruglia is femcell music. Give me a break.
Well, I think it kind of took a toxic turn towards toxic femininity. Like, they're leaning into manipulation tactics that you can use on men, and popularizing their own version of looks maxing, and It also gets into the territory of manifestation and astrology, witchcraft, trying to control people.
Remember, astrology is just racism for women.
These are all like overlapping subcultures online.
Be kind in the bio. Yeah.
But there was this study they did on Femcell posts online by the National Institute of Health. Researchers used as their starting point a recent sexual frustration theory and applied it to mainly incels, but they posited that frustration arising from unfulfilled desires to have sex, unavailable partners, and unsatisfying sexual activities appears to increase the risk of aggression, violence, and crime associated with relief seeking, power seeking, revenge seeking, and displaced frustration. The Femcell researchers found that, like incels, femcells struggled with sexual frustration and that gender dynamics of sex and power made them react differently. Rather than turning their frustrations out onto the world, as with incels, the femcells turned their frustration onto themselves. Unlike fictional Machiavellian femcells, like Gone Girl, for instance, the self-described femcells in real life were more interested in their own frustrations and exhibited less support for aggression, violence, and crime than what has been reported about the male incels. Although some referenced their anger, hatred, or desires for revenge, this antipathy may have been rooted in their concerns about how to find a suitable intimate partner while avoiding the threat that women often face from violent men.
Sorry.
So they're borderline. These women are borderline.
Probably
Borderline
have a
personality.
myriad of personality disorders which are
That's
incurable.
yeah.
With the
Lifelong.
medications to boot.
Yeah, but they say
Machiavellian femcells.
Femcell core has arisen as a reaction to those trends, a messier, angrier, unapologetic pushback to ideas of femininity that have become not more modern but more conservative in recent years. Femcell posting is a way for these women, many of them teenagers, to express the ugly parts of themselves and the manipulative, toxic, and angry parts.
This is what happened when you get rid of Tumblr and LiveJournal.
So they use hashtags like female manipulator, female rage, and toxic femininity.
There's a 20 here from Jared Klein.
Not seeing it.
Says, have any of you four been to Cleveland? I really enjoyed seeing familiar places in the Superman trailer, like the kiss in the arcade building and the building about to fall onto the bridge, which is Highway I-90. I've been through Cleveland at least once in my life, but not enough to recognize,
Isn't Cleveland like notoriously a terrible city to even visit?
Ohio's just a terrible place in general.
So Superman,
Skibbity Riz.
Superman has Skibbity Ohio Riz.
So I see a lot of these, like, as I've been like scrolling on Instagram Reels, I see a lot of these posts about like, it's just fake dating advice that's being given to women by women. It's not real dating advice. It's like, here's how you manipulate him and say the thing that's going to have him like obsessed with you. Yeah, like stuff like that. And I'm just like, this is only being consumed and believed by teenagers with no dating experience. Like, this is insane. But they lean into this fake persona of like the man eater or like the female manipulator. And they lean into that idea of toxic femininity because
it's empowering.
It's a cope. It's a cope.
It's a cope.
Because these are the exact women who really still have those fairy tale romance dreams. And they
That's
want
an ultimate cope then.
Yeah, and because those are unfulfilled fantasies, they instead are coping by thinking like, oh, I didn't want that anyway.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.